The sound of shattering glass echoed through the upstairs room of the Silver Spur saloon, and Cora Hayes knew without looking that her father had found her cigar box again. She pressed her forehead against the dusty window frame, her fingers trembling as they gripped the red velvet curtain she had just finished mending for Madame Rousseau. 3 weeks of careful stitching, and now the coins she had earned would disappear into the bottom of a whiskey bottle before sunset. It was May of 1882 in Caldwell, Idaho, a town that had sprung up along the railroad line just a few years prior, full of rough men and harder women trying to carve out something resembling a life. Cora had turned 19 that spring, though she felt decades older every time she watched her father stumble through the door with empty pockets and emptier promises. He had not always been this way. When her mother was alive, Patrick Hayes had been a blacksmith with steady hands and a reputation for honest work. But the fever that took Margaret Hayes 5 years ago had taken something vital from her husband, too, leaving behind a hollow man who sought comfort in the burn of liquor. Cora worked 6 days a week doing seamstress work for the saloon girls, mending their elaborate dresses and altering the fancy garments they ordered from San Francisco. She took in laundry from the hotel. She baked bread to sell at the general store. Every penny counted, every nickel hoarded with desperate care because someday she wanted to open her own dress shop. Someday she wanted a life that did not smell like whiskey and broken promises. The door to her tiny room swung open, and Patrick Hayes stood swaying in the doorframe, his once broad shoulders now thin and stooped. His eyes, the same green as her own, would not meet her gaze. "Need to borrow a bit, Cora girl," he mumbled, his words slurring together. "Just until the railroad pays me for that fence work." "You are not working on any fence, Papa." Cora kept her voice steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "Mr. Thornton fired you last month." "Well, I will find something." His voice turned petulant, childish. But a man needs a drink to keep his spirits up while looking. "I do not have anything to give you." The lie tasted bitter, but she had learned that truth only led to ransacked rooms and stolen coins. She had $43 hidden in various places throughout their 2-room apartment above the bakery, more money than she had ever managed to keep before, and she would fight tooth and nail to protect it. Her father's face darkened, and for a moment she saw a flash of the man he used to be, all righteous anger and wounded pride. Then it faded, replaced by something worse: resignation. He shuffled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. "You are a good girl, Cora. Better than your old man deserves." The door closed, and Cora sank onto her narrow bed, pressing her palms against her eyes to stop the tears. This could not continue. She knew it could not continue. But what choice did she have? He was her father, the only family she had left in this world. The next morning she carried a basket of mended clothes down to the Silver Spur. The saloon looked different in daylight, almost respectable, with the floors swept clean and the chairs stacked neatly on tables. Madame Rousseau met her at the door, counting out coins with practiced efficiency. "Your father was here last night," the older woman said without preamble. "Tried to tell me you owed him money, that I should pay him directly for your work." Shame flooded through Cora, hot and acidic. "What did you tell him?" "That I pay the person who does the work, not their drunken relatives." Madame Rousseau's painted face softened slightly. "You are a good seamstress, Cora, but this situation cannot go on forever. Eventually, he will cause trouble that reflects on you." Cora nodded mutely, taking the coins and tucking them deep into her skirt pocket. She knew Madame Rousseau was right, but knowledge did not equal solution. She was walking back toward the apartment, her mind churning with worry, when she collided with something solid. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her, and she looked up into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. "Whoa there, miss, you all right?" The man was tall, lean in the way of someone who spent long days in the saddle, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that needed cutting. He wore typical cowboy gear, trail-worn and dusty, but his face held a kindness that made something in her chest loosen. "I am fine. I apologize. I was not watching where I was going." Cora stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they stood on the boardwalk. No harm done. He tipped his hat, a gesture that seemed old-fashioned even for Idaho. Name is Tobias Barrett. Just signed on with the Double C Ranch outside town. Cora Hayes. She found herself studying his face, the fine lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, the strong jaw, an honest set to his mouth. He could not be much older than her, perhaps 21 or 22. Pleased to meet you, Miss Hayes. Tobias Barrett did not move on as she expected. Instead, he shifted his weight, looking almost nervous. I do not suppose you could direct me to the boarding house. I was told there is one near the church, but every street in this town looks the same to me. Cora felt herself smile, a real smile, for the first time in days. That would be Mrs. Callahan's place. It is just up this street and around the corner, the house with the green shutters. Much obliged. He started to turn, then paused. Will I see you around town, Miss Hayes? Caldwell is not very large. I imagine you will see everyone around town eventually. I suppose that is true. Something in his expression suggested he meant the question specifically, but he did not press. He simply tipped his hat again and continued down the street, his boots making hollow sounds on the wooden planks. Cora watched him go, surprised to find her heart beating faster. She shook her head at her own foolishness. The last thing she needed in her complicated life was to notice a cowboy with kind eyes and a nice smile. Her father was passed out on the floor when she got home. Cora stepped over him carefully, noting the empty bottle by his hand and the sour smell of vomit. She covered him with a blanket because she could not stop herself from that basic kindness, then went to check her hiding places. The coffee tin in the kitchen still held its $8. The loose floorboard under her bed protected another $12. But the small leather pouch she had tucked behind the loose brick in the fireplace was gone, and with it, $10 she had been saving since January. She did not cry. She was beyond crying. Instead, she sat on the floor beside the cold fireplace and tried to think. She needed a better hiding place, somewhere her father could not search when he was desperate and she was out working. But where? The apartment had only 2 rooms, and she had already used every trick she could think of. That night, after her father woke and stumbled out to find more drink, Cora lay in bed and thought about Tobias Barrett. There had been something in his eyes, a steadiness that called to her. She wondered if he was a good man, if his word meant something. Then she wondered why she was wondering such things about a stranger she had spoken to for 3 minutes on the street. The next Sunday, she saw him at church. Mrs. Callahan's boarding house residents attended as a group, and Tobias sat in the back row, his hat resting on his knee. He caught her eye and nodded, a small gesture of recognition that warmed her more than it should have. After the service, as people milled about in the sunshine, he approached her. Good morning, Miss Hayes. Fine service today. Good morning, Mr. Barrett. Cora was aware of the watching eyes around them. Caldwell was small enough that any conversation could become gossip by supper time. I was wondering, Tobias said, and that nervous quality was back in his voice, if you might do me the honor of letting me walk you home. That is, if you do not have other plans, and if it would not be too forward of me. Cora knew she should say no. She had no business encouraging the attention of any man, not with her life in such chaos, but something in her rebelled against the constant weight of responsibility and shame. Just once she wanted to be a normal young woman talking to a nice young man. I would like that, she heard herself say. They walked slowly through the quiet Sunday streets, and Tobias told her about his life. He had grown up in Colorado, working on his uncle's ranch until a drought forced them to sell. He had drifted west looking for work, moving from ranch to ranch, learning the trade of cowboying. He spoke about horses with genuine affection and described the mountains with a poet's eye for beauty. What about you? He asked as they neared her street. Have you always lived in Caldwell? No. We came here when the town was new. My father thought there would be opportunity. Cora kept her voice neutral, offering no details about the decline that had followed. I do seamstress work, mending and alterations mostly. That is a valuable skill. Tobias's voice held genuine respect. My mother used to say that a person who could create with their hands had a kind of magic. I do not know about magic, but I enjoy it. The precision of it, making something damaged into something whole again. She paused, realizing they had reached her building. This is where I live. Tobias looked up at the shabby apartments above the bakery, and she braced herself for judgment. But he only said, "Would you allow me to call on you again, Miss Hayes? Maybe next Sunday after church?" "Yes." The word came without hesitation, and Cora realized she meant it. "I would like that very much." She did not mention Tobias to her father, who spent most of his waking hours either drunk or seeking drink. She did not mention him to Madame Rousseau or the girls at the saloon. The budding connection felt too fragile to expose to the harsh light of her daily reality. But the next Sunday came, and Tobias was waiting outside the church with a bouquet of wildflowers that he had clearly picked himself. They walked together along the river, talking about everything and nothing. Cora found herself laughing at his stories about ranch life, the ornery horses and stubborn cattle, and the endless practical jokes the cowboys played on each other. In turn, she told him about some of the saloon girls, the complicated women with hard pasts who had shown her kindness when she needed it most. "You speak about them with real affection," Tobias observed. "Some folks would not associate with women like that." "Some folks are quick to judge and slow to understand." Cora's voice was sharp. "Those women work hard. They survive in a world that offers them few choices. I will not look down on anyone trying to make their way." I was not criticizing. Tobias's hand brushed hers as they walked. "I was admiring. You have a good heart, Cora Hayes." The use of her given name, without the formal Miss, sent a thrill through her. She let their fingers tangle together, a bold gesture that felt like a promise. They saw each other whenever Tobias's ranch work allowed. He would ride into town on Sunday afternoons, and they would walk or sit by the river, their conversations growing deeper and more personal. Cora told him about her mother, about the life they had before, carefully editing out the worst of her father's decline. Tobias spoke about his dreams of saving enough money to start his own small ranch. Nothing fancy, just a place to raise good horses. It was during their 5th Sunday together in late July that Cora arrived at their meeting spot with red-rimmed eyes. She had tried to hide the evidence of crying, but Tobias saw immediately. What happened? His voice was urgent, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" "Not hurt, just—" She could not continue, the words choking her. The previous night, her father had torn apart the apartment in a drunken rage, searching for money. He had found the $15 under her mattress, every penny she had managed to save in the past month. The whole story came tumbling out. Her father's drinking, the stolen wages, the endless cycle of working and losing and working again. She had not meant to tell him, had tried so hard to keep this shameful secret, but the dam had broken. She cried against his shoulder, and Tobias held her, his hand stroking her hair, murmuring soothing words. When the storm passed, she pulled back, mortified. "I am sorry. You must think I'm such a fool." "I think you are brave." Tobias's blue eyes were fierce. "Cora, what you have been enduring, taking care of a man who should be taking care of you, it is not right. He is my father. I cannot just abandon him." "I am not suggesting you abandon him, but you also cannot let him drain you dry." Tobias was quiet for a moment, thinking. "How much money do you make in a week?" "It varies, maybe $3 or $4 if I have a lot of work." "And he takes it all?" "He finds it. I try to hide it, but—" She gestured helplessly. Tobias's jaw tightened, and she saw anger there, controlled but real. "I have an idea. It might seem strange, but hear me out." "All right." "What if you gave me your earnings to hold? I have a strong box at the boarding house, one with a good lock. Your father does not know me, has never seen me. He would have no reason to come looking for money at Mrs. Callahan's place." Cora stared at him. The offer was generous, almost too generous, but it also required trust, and trust was a commodity she had learned to guard carefully. Tobias seemed to understand her hesitation. I know it is asking a lot. We have only known each other a short while, but Cora, I care about you. More than I probably should, considering we are barely acquainted. I hate thinking of you working so hard just to have everything stolen. Why would you do this for me? Her voice came out as a whisper. Because you deserve better. Because I think you are remarkable. Because... He took a breath. Because I'm falling in love with you and I want to help you in any way I can. The world seemed to stop. Cora looked at this man, this kind cowboy who had walked into her life just 2 months ago, and felt something shift in her chest. She thought about trust, about risk, about the way he had held her while she cried. She thought about his steady eyes and gentle hands and the way he spoke about his dreams. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she said quietly, and yes, I would be grateful for your help. They worked out the details. Every week, after Cora finished her work, she would find a reason to walk past the boarding house. She would leave her earnings with Tobias, who would record the amount in a little notebook and keep the money locked away. It was not a perfect solution, but it was better than the constant theft. The arrangement started that very week. Cora collected payment from Madame Rousseau in the hotel, sold her bread, and by Thursday had accumulated $3.60. She walked to Mrs. Callahan's boarding house in the evening when other residents were at dinner. Tobias met her in the front parlor, and she handed him the coins wrapped in a handkerchief. $3.60, she said, keeping her voice low. Tobias produced a small leather notebook and carefully wrote, July 27th, 1882. $3.60. Total, $3.60. He showed her the entry, then tucked the money into his vest pocket. I will add it to the strongbox upstairs. You can have it back anytime you need it. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for what he was doing, for the lifeline he was throwing her. No thanks needed. He reached out and squeezed her hand briefly. I want you to have your dreams, Cora. You have worked too hard to lose them. Walking home, Cora felt lighter than she had in months. The money was safe. She did not have to worry about her father tearing apart the apartment. She could actually start to save, to plan, to hope. Her father noticed the change, though not in the way she feared. You seem happier lately, Patrick Hayes said one evening. He was only slightly drunk, still capable of coherent conversation. Something good happen? I've been getting more work, Cora said carefully. Madame Rousseau recommended me to some of the ladies at the hotel. That is good. That is real good. Her father's face crumpled slightly. I know I have not been much of a father to you, girl. Your mother would be ashamed of what I have become. Papa. Cora did not know how to finish the sentence. I am going to do better. I swear it. Any day now, I will get myself sorted out. She had heard these promises before too many times to count, but she nodded and smiled, because what else could she do? August brought intense heat to Caldwell, the kind that made the streets shimmer and turned the river low and sluggish. Cora continued her routine. Work, deliver earnings to Tobias, spend Sundays walking out with him. The notebook entries grew. $4.20, $2.90, $5.10. By mid-September, she had $48 in Tobias's strongbox, more money than she had ever possessed in her life. The knowledge sat warm in her chest, a secret promise of a better future. Her relationship with Tobias deepened as well. They had moved beyond polite courtship into something more substantial. He kissed her one evening in late September, gentle and sweet, and Cora felt something in her soul recognize him. This was the man she wanted. This was the future she could build. I love you, Tobias said against her hair. They were sitting by the river, the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. I know it might seem too fast, but I have never been more certain of anything. I love you too. Cora turned to face him, her hands cupping his jaw. You have given me hope when I thought I had none left. Marry me." The words came out rushed, almost nervous. "I know I do not have much, just my wages and a dream. But I will work hard for you, Cora. I will give you everything I can." "Yes." She was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." They decided to wait until spring for the wedding, to give Tobias time to save more money and for Cora to prepare. She would continue her seamstress work, continue adding to the strongbox. By their wedding day, she hoped to have enough saved to contribute to their starting fund, to be a true partner in building their life together. But keeping secrets in a small town proved harder than anticipated. In October, Cora was carrying a basket of laundry when she saw her father emerging from the saloon with another man, someone she did not recognize. They were arguing, her father's face red and belligerent. "I told you I will get you the money," Patrick Hayes shouted. "My daughter works, she has savings." "I have heard that story before, Hayes. You owe me $40, and I want it by Friday, or there will be consequences." Cora's blood ran cold. $40. Her father had been gambling again or borrowing from loan sharks. She ducked into an alley before he could see her, her heart pounding. How did he even know she had savings? She had been so careful. That night her father came home drunk and angry. "Where is the money, Cora?" "What money?" She kept her voice steady, though fear made her hands shake. "Do not play games with me. I know you have been saving. Mrs. Callahan mentioned seeing you at the boarding house, said you have been visiting someone there." His eyes narrowed. "Some cowboy courting you? Is he keeping your money?" "I do not know what you're talking about." Patrick Hayes moved faster than she expected, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. "I owe dangerous men, girl. Do you understand? They will hurt me if I do not pay. You would not want that on your conscience, would you?" "Let go of me." Cora tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. "Get me that money. However much you have saved, I need it. Just this once, and then I will leave you alone, I promise." "You have made that promise before." His hand raised, and for a horrible moment Cora thought he would hit her, but something in her face must have stopped him. He dropped his hand and stumbled backward. "Please, Cora, I am your father. Would you really let them hurt me?" She wanted to scream that he had already hurt her over and over every time he stole her wages and broke his promises, but the words stuck in her throat. He was her father. The man who had carried her on his shoulders as a child, who had taught her to fish in the stream behind their old house, who had loved her mother with his whole heart. "I will see what I can do," she heard herself say, "but I need time. You have until Friday." After he left, Cora sat in the darkness and tried to think. Friday was 3 days away. She could not give him the full $48, not after months of careful saving. But if she did not give him something, what would happen? She had heard stories about what loan sharks did to people who did not pay. The next morning she found Tobias before he left for the ranch. They met behind the livery stable, and she quickly explained the situation. "Absolutely not." Tobias's voice was hard. "Cora, if you give him this money, he will just come back for more. This will never end. But if I do not, they might hurt him, or worse. He made his choices. He gambled money he did not have. Why should you suffer for his mistakes?" "Because he is my father." The words came out more desperately than she intended. "I know it is not fair. I know he does not deserve my help. But I cannot just stand by and let something terrible happen to him." Tobias was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. Finally he said, "How much do you want to give him?" "Maybe $20, enough to show I'm trying to help, but not everything." "And what do you think will happen when he finds out you have more saved?" "He will be back, Cora. Next week or next month. But he will be back." "I know, but I have to try." She was crying now, hating herself for the weakness. "I cannot build my happiness on his suffering. I just cannot." Tobias pulled her close, and she felt him sigh against her hair. "All right, $20, but after this we need a different plan." They walked to the boarding house together. Mrs. Callahan was out at the market, and the other residents were at work. Tobias led Cora upstairs to his small room, simple and clean, with a narrow bed and a chest of drawers. The strongbox sat on the top shelf of the closet, iron-bound and solid. He unlocked it with a key he wore on a chain around his neck. Inside, Cora saw her accumulated savings, along with what looked like Tobias's own money neatly separated. He counted out $20, then carefully noted the withdrawal in the leather notebook. October 16th, 1882. Withdrawal, $20. Remaining balance, $28. Cora took the money with hands that felt numb. This represented weeks of work, dozens of mended dresses and scrubbed shirts and loaves of bread, gone to pay for her father's recklessness. "I am sorry," she whispered. "Do not apologize." Tobias closed the strongbox and locked it again. "You are doing what you think is right. I just wish circumstances were different." She gave her father the money that evening. Patrick Hayes took it with shaking hands and something that might have been shame in his eyes. "Thank you, Cora girl. I will pay you back. Every penny, I swear. Just make sure those men leave you alone." "I will. And I'm going to stop drinking. Starting tomorrow, not a drop." Cora said nothing. She had heard it all before. Friday came and went. Her father returned home late, apparently intact. The loan sharks had been paid, at least partially, but Tobias's prediction came true sooner than even he expected. The following Tuesday, Patrick Hayes came home with another demand. "I need $10 more." "What? Why?" Cora felt the familiar mix of anger and despair. "The man I owed," he said, "$20 was just interest. I need another $20 for the principal." "You told me $20 would cover it." "I was wrong. Or maybe I did not understand, but Cora, they are serious. They said if I do not have the rest by tomorrow, they will break my fingers." He held up his hands, as if showing her what would be lost. "Please. I know I have no right to ask, but please." Cora closed her eyes. She could refuse. She should refuse. But the image of her father with broken hands, unable to work even the odd jobs he occasionally managed, was too much to bear. She went to Tobias that night and asked for another $10. His face showed his frustration, but he did not argue. He simply opened the strongbox and counted out the money. October 22nd, 1882. Withdrawal, $10. Remaining balance, $18. $18. Months of work reduced to $18. Cora wanted to scream. "This has to stop," Tobias said quietly. "Cora, I love you, but I cannot keep watching him destroy you like this. I know it has to stop, but I do not know how. Come live at the boarding house. Mrs. Callahan has a room for women. It is small, but it is yours. Your father cannot take what he cannot find. I cannot afford the rent and still save money. Then marry me now. We will figure out the rest." Cora was tempted, so tempted, but something in her rebelled. She did not want to start her marriage as someone fleeing, someone broken. She wanted to come to Tobias as a partner with her own savings and her own dignity. "Let me think about it," she said. "Just give me a little time." But time was not on her side. A week later, her father came home with another debt, this one to a different gambler. $15 needed immediately. Cora refused. "No more, Papa. I have helped you twice. That is enough." Patrick Hayes' face darkened. "So you do have more money. I knew that Cowboy was keeping it for you. It does not matter what I have or do not have. I am not giving you more." "The hell you are not." He moved toward her, menacing. "That is my money. I am your father. Everything you earn belongs to me by rights." "That is not how the law works, and you know it. Law does not matter in alleys at night, girl. These men will kill me." "Then maybe you should stop gambling." The words burst out of her, all the pent-up rage and frustration of years. "Maybe you should take responsibility for yourself instead of bleeding me dry." Her father's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, and finally something that looked like defeat. He turned and walked out without another word. Cora thought that was the end of it. She thought he had finally understood that she was done enabling his self-destruction. She was wrong. 2 days later, Tobias found her at Madame Rousseau's, his face grim. "Your father came to the boarding house. He tried to get into my room." Horror flooded through her. What happened? Mrs. Callahan stopped him, "But Cora, he knows about the strongbox now. He told her some story about how you were keeping money from him, how he had a right to it." "Did he get anything?" "No, but he made enough of a scene that Mrs. Callahan is uncomfortable. She asked if there was somewhere else I could store your savings." Cora felt her world tilting. Even her safe haven was compromised. "I am so sorry. I never meant for this to affect you." "It is not your fault." Tobias took her hands. "But we need a real solution. Come stay at the boarding house, or marry me tomorrow, or both. But this situation cannot continue. I need to talk to my father, make him understand that he is crossing a line. Be careful. Desperate men do desperate things." Cora promised she would, but when she returned to the apartment, she found her father packing a battered carpet bag. "Papa, what are you doing?" Patrick Hayes would not meet her eyes. "Leaving town tonight. Those men I owed, the ones you helped me pay, they were fronting for someone bigger, someone dangerous. There is talk he is coming to collect personally, and I do not intend to be here when he arrives. But if you leave, will that not make things worse?" "Cannot get much worse, girl." He straightened, and for a moment she saw a flash of his old pride. "I have made a mess of everything. Your mother would be ashamed. Hell, I am ashamed, but I am too weak to fix it, and I am too scared to stay." "Where will you go?" "South, maybe, California, somewhere I can start fresh." He finally looked at her, and his eyes were wet. "I am sorry, Cora, for all of it. You deserved better than me." Part of her wanted to rage at him, to list every hurt and betrayal, but another part, the part that remembered him before, just felt tired. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said quietly. "That cowboy of yours, he's a good man. Let him take care of you." Patrick Hayes shouldered his bag. "There is a man named Marcus Teague, runs a gambling operation out of Boise. He is the one I owe. If he comes looking for me, tell him I am gone. Tell him you do not know where." "How much do you owe him?" Her father's bitter laugh held no humor. $80. Might as well be $800 for all the chance I have of getting it." He left through the back door, a shadow disappearing into the November darkness. Cora stood in the empty apartment and felt nothing. No grief, no relief, just a vast emptiness where her father used to be. She went to Tobias the next morning and told him everything. He held her while she cried, not for the father who had left, but for the father she had lost years ago to grief and whiskey. "Move into the boarding house," Tobias urged. "Today. Do not stay in that apartment alone. I cannot afford it. I will cover your rent until we marry. Please, Cora, I will worry myself sick thinking of you there by yourself." So she packed her meager belongings and moved into a tiny room on the women's floor of Mrs. Callahan's boarding house. It had a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. It was the smallest space she had ever called her own, and it felt like a palace. Without her father's constant theft, Cora began to save again in earnest. Every week she brought her earnings to Tobias, and he carefully recorded them in the notebook. The balance grew. $23, $31, $47. They set a new wedding date, April 15th, 1883. Spring was a good time for new beginnings. Tobias was saving too, every spare dollar going toward their future. He talked about a piece of land he had heard about. 40 acres with a creek running through it, perfect for horses. "We could build a small house," he said one Sunday as they walked. "Nothing fancy at first, but honest work, and it would be ours." "I would love that." Cora leaned into his shoulder. "A place of our own, can you imagine?" "I imagine it every day." December brought snow and bitter cold. Cora's seamstress work slowed with the weather, but she picked up extra shifts in the boarding house kitchen to make up the difference. Mrs. Callahan, a sharp-eyed widow who missed nothing, seemed to approve of Cora's relationship with Tobias. He is one of the good ones, she told Cora while they peeled potatoes. Steady, reliable, the kind of man who keeps his word. I know, I'm very lucky. Luck has nothing to do with it, girl. You are choosing well. That is wisdom, not luck. Christmas came quietly. Tobias gave Cora a beautiful leather journal. For your dress shop, he said. You can use it to record designs and measurements and orders. She had made him a warm wool scarf, painstakingly knitted during evening hours, for cold mornings riding out to check cattle. They spent the afternoon with other boarding house residents, sharing a meal and swapping stories. It was the happiest Christmas Cora could remember in years. January brought a cold snap that froze the river solid. It also brought Marcus Teague. Cora was walking back from the general store when a man stepped into her path. He was well dressed in a way that stood out in Caldwell, with a fine wool coat and polished boots. His face was hard, his eyes calculating. Miss Hayes? Yes? Cora's instincts screamed danger. My name is Marcus Teague. I believe your father owed me some money. Her mouth went dry. My father left town in November. I do not know where he went. So I have heard. Unfortunate. Teague's smile did not reach his eyes, but debts do not disappear just because a man runs. They transfer to family. That is not legal. Legal is a matter of perspective, Miss Hayes. Your father owes me $80. I expect payment within the week. I do not have $80, and even if I did, I would not pay my father's gambling debts. Teague's expression hardened. I think you will reconsider. Ask around town about what happens to people who refuse me. Then come find me at the Silver Spur with my money. He walked away, leaving Cora shaking on the frozen street. She went directly to Tobias, finding him in the boarding house parlor. We need to talk, now. They went to his room, propriety be damned, and she told him about the encounter. Tobias's face went pale, then flushed with anger. He cannot make you pay your father's debts. That man is trying to intimidate you. Well, it is working. Tobias, I heard stories about Marcus Teague. He is not just some small-time gambler. He is dangerous. Then we go to the sheriff. And tell him what? That a man asked me to pay money? He has not actually threatened me? The threat was implied. That will not hold up, and you know it. Cora paced the small room. How much do I have in the strongbox now? Cora, no. How much? Tobias sighed. $53, but you're not giving it to him. What choice do I have? You have every choice. You worked for that money. It is yours. Your father made his bed. Let him lie in it. My father is gone. It is me Teague will hurt if I do not pay. They argued for an hour, Tobias insisting there had to be another way, Cora seeing no alternative. Finally exhausted, they reached a compromise. They would ask around town, learn more about Teague and what he was capable of before making any decisions. The stories they heard were not encouraging. Marcus Teague had a reputation. 2 years ago, a farmer who refused to pay a debt lost his barn to a mysterious fire. Last year, a shop owner who welched on a bet ended up with both arms broken. The sheriff knew about Teague but could never make charges stick. He was careful, using intermediaries and creating plausible deniability. We could leave, Tobias suggested on the third day. Just pack up and go, start over somewhere he cannot find us. With what money? If I give him the savings, we have nothing. If we run without paying, he will come after us. Either way, we lose. Then marry me tomorrow. As my wife, you would have legal protections. Would I? Or would he just hurt you to get to me? They were trapped, and they both knew it. The week's deadline loomed. On the 6th day, Cora made her decision. I am going to pay him. Cora, listen to me. $53 is not enough anyway. He wants $80, so I will offer him the $53 and negotiate for the rest. Maybe I can work it off somehow or pay in installments. I hate this. Tobias's voice was raw. I hate that you have to clean up your father's mess. So do I, but I am trying to survive, and survival is rarely pretty. The next morning, Cora went to the Silver Spur with Tobias at her side. She had insisted he come, wanting a witness to whatever deal she struck. They found Marcus Teague at a corner table playing solitaire. "Miss Hayes, I was wondering if you would be sensible." "I have $53. It is everything I have saved. Take it as partial payment and give me time to earn the rest." Teague considered her, his eyes moving from Cora to Tobias and back. "Who is this?" "My fiancé, Tobias Barrett." "A cowboy." Teague's tone made it sound like an insult. "And what does a cowboy plan to do about the remaining $27? "We will pay it," Tobias said tightly, "but we need time. Neither of us has that kind of money sitting around. Time I can provide for a price." Teague leaned back in his chair. "The $53 covers the principal, but interest is 10% per month, so that $27 becomes about $30 by the end of February, $33 by the end of March. You understand how this works?" "That is robbery," Tobias growled. "That is business. Take it or leave it." Cora felt the walls closing in. At that rate, they would never escape the debt, but what choice did she have? "How long do we have to pay the remainder?" "Let us say 2 months. Bring me $57 by March 15th and we will call it even." $57. It might as well have been $500, but Cora nodded. "Agreed." She went to the boarding house with Tobias and retrieved her savings from the strongbox. $53, every penny she had earned since August. Gone. Tobias recorded it in the notebook with a grim expression. January 28th, 1883, withdrawal $53. Remaining balance, 0. 0. They were starting over from nothing, and now they owed $57 more in 6 weeks. "We will figure this out," Tobias said, though his voice lacked conviction. "I can take extra shifts, maybe pick up work in town on Sundays. I can take in more sewing, maybe do some cooking for the boarding house." They held each other in his small room, and Cora tried not to think about how unfair it all was. She had been so close to her dream, and now it felt farther away than ever. The next weeks were brutal. Cora worked from dawn until late into the night, taking every job she could find. Tobias did the same, working brutal hours at the ranch and then coming into town to haul freight or work at the livery stable. They saw each other in stolen moments, both too exhausted for more than brief conversations. By mid-February, they had saved $23. It was not enough, not nearly enough. They needed $34 more, and time was running out. "We could try to renegotiate," Cora suggested one evening. They were sitting in the boarding house kitchen after everyone else had gone to bed, drinking weak tea and trying to plan. "I do not think Teague is the renegotiating type." "Then what do we do?" Tobias was quiet for a long moment. "I could sell my horse." "No." Cora's response was immediate. "You need your horse for work." "I could borrow a mount from the ranch. It would not be ideal, but—" "No, Tobias. I will not let you sacrifice more for my father's mistakes. Our mistakes now. We are in this together." The words should have been comforting, but they just made Cora feel worse. She was dragging him down with her, tying him to her father's failure. The solution came from an unexpected source. Madame Rousseau found Cora at the boarding house in late February. "I heard about your situation," the older woman said without preamble. "The whole town is talking about Marcus Teague squeezing you." Shame heated Cora's cheeks. "I am handling it." "Are you? Because from where I stand, you are working yourself to death and still coming up short." Madame Rousseau sat down uninvited. "I have a proposition. I am opening a new establishment in Silver City, a higher class place. I need someone who can sew fine dresses, really fine, not just mending work. 3 months of work, and I will pay you $80. You could pay off Teague and have money left over." Cora stared. $80 for 3 months' work? "You would be living at the new establishment, working long hours. It is not easy money, but it is money. Silver City is 2 days' ride from here, which is why I am offering so much. You would have to leave your life here temporarily, but Cora, this could solve your problem." It could. It absolutely could. But it meant leaving Tobias, leaving Caldwell, living in a saloon for 3 months. Can I think about it? You have 2 days. That is when I leave. Cora discussed it with Tobias that night. His first instinct was to refuse on her behalf, but she stopped him. It is my decision. And Tobias, this could clear the debt completely. We could start fresh. 3 months without seeing you. I know, but 3 months with a real future at the end of it. What if Teague will not wait? I will go see him. Explain that I have guaranteed work and will pay him in full by the end of May. It is only 2 more months than his original deadline. Tobias looked miserable, but he nodded. If this is what you want to do, I will support you. Marcus Teague was surprisingly agreeable when Cora laid out her proposal. Silver City, Working for Madame Rousseau's new place? Yes, I will have the full amount by the end of May. Make it $90 to cover the extra interest, and we have a deal. $90. 10 more than Madame Rousseau was paying, but Cora had no choice. She agreed. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Cora packed her few belongings, said goodbye to Mrs. Callahan, and tried not to cry when she held Tobias. 3 months, he whispered against her hair. Just 3 months. Then you come back, we pay off the debt, and we get married. Promise me you will be here when I return. Cora Hayes, I would wait a lifetime for you. She kissed him, pouring all her love and fear into it. Then she climbed into the wagon next to Madame Rousseau and watched Caldwell disappear behind them. Silver City was rougher than Caldwell, a mining town full of desperate men and hard edges. Madame Rousseau's new establishment was indeed higher class, with real wallpaper and gilt-framed mirrors. The women who worked there were polished professionals who knew how to handle dangerous clients. Cora's job was to maintain the elaborate costumes the women wore. She spent 14 hours a day sewing, mending, and altering dresses. The work was relentless, but she was good at it. Madame Rousseau praised her skill and paid her weekly in advance, trusting her not to run. The money piled up slowly. $10, $20, $35. Cora kept it hidden in a locked trunk in her tiny attic room, checking it obsessively. She wrote letters to Tobias every week, and he wrote back when he could. His letters were full of mundane details about ranch life, but she could read the loneliness between the lines. March turned to April, and Cora watched spring arrive in the mountains with a bitter heart. She should have been preparing for her wedding. Instead, she was hemming silk dresses in a saloon 200 miles from home. In mid-April, disaster struck. A fire broke out in the establishment kitchen, and while no one was hurt, the smoke damage was extensive. Madame Rousseau shut down for repairs, sending the women to a sister establishment in Boise. What about me? Cora asked. Come to Boise if you want, or go home to Caldwell. I will pay you for the time you have worked 2 full months. That is $53. $53. Not enough. She needed 90, and she only had 53. I can stay and help with repairs, Cora offered desperately. There is no work for a seamstress while we rebuild. I am sorry, Cora. You are welcome to come to Boise and continue working, but I cannot keep you here. Boise was in the wrong direction, farther from Caldwell, but the other option was to return home with insufficient money and face Marcus Teague's wrath. Cora chose Boise. The next 6 weeks were the hardest of her life. She worked at the Boise establishment, but competition for sewing work was fiercer. She made less money, and her deadline loomed. By the end of May, she had $68. Close, but not enough. She wrote to Tobias explaining the situation. His response was immediate. Come home. We will figure out the rest together. Cora bought a stage ticket and headed back to Caldwell in early June. The journey felt endless, every mile weighted with anxiety about what awaited her. Tobias was waiting at the stage station when she arrived. He looked thinner, worn, but his face lit up when he saw her. They embraced in the street, not caring who saw. I missed you so much, Cora whispered. Never leave again. I do not care how desperate things get. They went directly to Mrs. Callahan's. Tobias had been saving too, working every possible extra job. He had $43 set aside. Combined with her $68, they had $111, more than enough to pay Teague. But when they went to the Silver Spur, they found Teague gone. Left town 3 weeks ago, the bartender told them. Some trouble in Boise caught up with him. I heard the law might actually make charges stick this time. What about his debts? Cora asked. Should the money people owe him? The bartender shrugged. Not my problem. He is gone. I would count yourself lucky and move on. Cora stood in the saloon, trying to process the information. The debt was gone, just like that. 4 months of brutal work, separation from Tobias, and constant fear, and the threat had simply vanished. It is over, she said numbly. It is actually over. Let us get out of here. Tobias took her hand and led her outside into the bright June sunshine. They walked to the river, their special place, and sat on the bank where they had spent so many Sunday afternoons. Cora leaned against Tobias, feeling the last of the tension drain from her body. We have $111, Tobias said quietly, more than we have ever had before. It is enough for a down payment on that land you mentioned, the 40 acres with the creek, or enough to open a small dress shop. Cora turned to look at him. You said we should use it for land. I said it could be used for land, but Cora, you have spent months working toward your dream. Maybe it is time for that dream to become real. What about your dream? The horse ranch? We'll still be there. We can build it slowly, but you have sacrificed so much for so long. Let us start with something that is yours. Tears welled in Cora's eyes. Ours. I want it to be ours. They spent the next week making plans. Cora would open a small shop in a storefront near the church. Nothing fancy at first, just basic alterations and custom sewing. Tobias would continue working at the ranch, and they would save toward buying land. They moved their wedding date up to July 4th, Independence Day, a new beginning in every sense. The wedding was small, but perfect. Mrs. Callahan hosted the reception at the boarding house. Madame Rousseau came from Boise and gifted Cora a bolt of beautiful silk. The ranch owner gave Tobias 3 days off, an unheard of generosity. They spent their wedding night in the small room above Cora's new shop, which would become their first real home together. Tobias carried her over the threshold, and they laughed at the formality of it. I love you, Cora Barrett, Tobias said, his arms around her. I love you too, and I promise no more secrets, no more hiding money. We face everything together from now on. Together. I like the sound of that. The shop did well from the start. Cora's reputation for fine work had spread during her time in Silver City, and customers came from all over the region. Tobias proved to have a good head for business, helping her manage accounts and negotiate prices. They worked as a true partnership, each supporting the other's dreams. Within a year, they had saved enough to make an offer on a small parcel of land outside town. Not the full 40 acres Tobias had dreamed of, but 10 acres with a stream and good grass. They broke ground on a cabin that summer, working on it every Sunday and holiday. By winter, they had 4 walls, a roof, and a working fireplace. In March of 1885, Cora discovered she was pregnant. The news sent both of them into a panic of joy and terror. They were finally stable, but a baby would change everything. We can handle this, Tobias assured her. We have handled everything else life threw at us. Their son was born in November, a healthy baby with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Matthew after Tobias's father. Cora took a month off from the shop, then set up a cradle in the workroom so she could keep the baby close while she sewed. The years that followed were not easy, but they were good. The shop expanded. Tobias saved enough to buy 2 horses and started breeding them on their small property. They added 2 more children to their family, a daughter named Sarah in 1887 and another son named James in 1889. Cora heard about her father only once more. In 1888, a traveling peddler mentioned meeting a Patrick Hayes in California, a broken-down man working as a stable hand. Cora sent money through the peddler, enough for new clothes and a few months' rent, with a note that said only, "Be well." She never heard back, but she did not need to. She had made her peace with her father's choices and her own. Forgiveness did not require reconciliation. In 1892, they finally bought the full 40 acres that Tobias had dreamed about a decade earlier. They built a proper house, barn, and corral. The horse breeding business flourished alongside the dress shop. Their children grew healthy and strong, surrounded by the hard-won security their parents had built. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Tobias surprised Cora with a gift, the leather notebook he had used to track her savings all those years ago. He had saved it, all the careful entries documenting their journey. "Look at where we started," he said, pointing to the first entry. $3.60. We have come a long way from hiding money from your father. Cora paged through the notebook, seeing the record of withdrawals and desperate measures, but also seeing the steady accumulation, the proof that perseverance mattered. "Thank you," she said softly, "for believing I deserved better, for helping me save for a future I could barely imagine. Thank you for trusting me when you had every reason not to trust anyone." Tobias pulled her close. "We built something real, Cora. Out of nothing, out of fear and determination, we built this life." She kissed him, thinking about the girl she had been, desperate and afraid, watching her father drink away every penny. That girl had thought she was destined for nothing but struggle. She could not have imagined standing in her own beautiful home, surrounded by children and prosperity and love. In 1895, Cora opened a second shop in Silver City, coming full circle to the place where she had worked so hard during those desperate months. She hired 2 young women as seamstresses, paying them fair wages and teaching them the trade. She remembered what it felt like to be powerless and made sure her employees never felt that way. Tobias expanded the horse operation, gaining a reputation throughout Idaho for breeding quality working animals. He took on apprentices from struggling families, giving young men a chance to learn a trade. Their children grew and thrived. Matthew showed an aptitude for business and eventually took over management of the dress shops. Sarah became a teacher, and James followed his father into horse breeding. The Barrett name became synonymous with quality and integrity. As Cora approached her 40th birthday, she sometimes thought about the path her life had taken. The hardship of those early years had shaped her in ways both painful and precious. She had learned what she was capable of enduring, and also what she was capable of building. One evening in the spring of 1898, she and Tobias sat on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the Idaho sky in shades of gold and rose. Their children were grown now, starting families of their own. The struggles that had once defined their existence were distant memories. "Do you ever regret it?" Cora asked. "Taking on someone else's burden the way you did? My father's debts could have destroyed you too." Tobias considered the question seriously, as he always did. "I regret that you had to suffer. I regret that your father made choices that hurt you, but I do not regret a single moment of standing beside you. Those experiences, as hard as they were, they showed me who you really are. Your strength, your determination, your ability to keep loving even when you had every reason to become bitter. I had you to lean on. I could not have survived it alone. Maybe, but you were surviving before I came along. I just gave you a safe place to keep your money. You did all the real work." Cora laughed. "It was more than a safe place to keep money. You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me that not every man would take and take until there was nothing left. You were partnership and protection and promise all rolled into one. That works both ways. You gave me purpose, a reason to work hard beyond just survival. You gave me a family, a home, a life worth living." Tobias took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her knuckles. "I would do it all again. Every hard day, every sacrifice, every moment of fear, because it led here, to this life with you." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened and the first stars appeared. In the barn, horses moved quietly in their stalls. In the house behind them, lamps glowed warm and golden. In town, the shops they had built served their community. And scattered across Idaho and beyond, their children were building their own lives, carrying forward the lessons of perseverance and partnership. The girl who had hidden her pennies from her father's desperate hands had become a woman who built empires. The cowboy who had offered his strong box and his heart had become the foundation of a legacy. Together, they had taken the broken pieces of a hard situation and forged something beautiful. Years later, when their grandchildren asked about the early days, Cora would tell them the truth. She would not sugarcoat the pain or pretend the fear had not been real, but she would also tell them about the power of choosing wisely, of finding someone who built you up instead of tearing you down. She would tell them that sometimes the hardest circumstances become the foundation for the greatest blessings. And she would tell them about a leather-bound notebook filled with careful entries, documenting every dollar saved and every dollar spent, a record of two people fighting their way toward a better future. That notebook sat in a place of honor in their home, a reminder that love shows up in practical ways, in protecting what matters, in building together, in believing that tomorrow can be better than today. The sun set completely over the Idaho mountains, and Tobias led Cora inside, into the warmth of the home they had built. Behind them, the land stretched peaceful and productive, a testament to what could grow when seeds were planted in good soil and tended with care. Their story had started with loss and desperation, but it had become something much bigger. A love story, yes, but also a story of resilience, partnership, and the radical act of building a future when the present offers only struggle. And as Cora closed the door against the night and turned to face her husband, her partner, her best choice, she knew with absolute certainty that every hard moment had been worth it. They had earned this peace. They had built this joy. And it would echo through generations, a legacy not of wealth alone, but of what two people could create when they chose to face the world together.